session, making part of the conversation. I'd just like to start by saying that BAPT board are delighted that this session is being sponsored by Type Coach, which is run by Robin Carly Toomey, and we really appreciate the support from Type Coach. And you can find out more about Type Coach by clicking on the link to their website, which is beside this session's information on our conference website. Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed getting to know Sharon while she's been preparing for this session. She, as many of you will know, has a thriving consulting practice, and as a facilitator and executive coach has helped make clients make Type part of their corporate culture. So just hearing how she does that is inspiring. And we're going to suggest that we keep questions to the end of the session, but do put comments in the chat throughout. And also Sharon has generously agreed to stay on for a few minutes after the session if anybody wants to have a chat with her.
Absolutely.
Over to you.
All right, thank you. So good morning, everybody. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me just say this, my screen is up here, so I'm not being disrespectful in terms of eye contact. It's just strictly a logistical issue. But I love the fact that the conference title was about keeping Type in conversation, because this is something that I specifically have talked about for many, many years. And just in terms of background, I'm really blessed to have, 400 plus client organizations that I work with, and I do executive coaching. I also do platform facilitation, both in person and by Zoom. And I also teach, I'm a master trainer of crucial conversations and crucial influence, both of which I believe make it possible for me to do some of the work that I do. So just to give you kind of a quick overview, these are not all my organizations that I've worked with, but I thought it might be useful to see the logos of some of them, particularly Mercedes, Brose. These are both international companies, as well as Sampo. But again, it's a privilege for these organizations, and these are ones in which Type has become part of their organizational process. So a couple of things that I point out is that the reality is that there's so many other instruments that are available. And this is something that Roy Childs in the last panel talked about with some amazing authority on that. But here's the thing that's so interesting is that fewer than 50% of those certified by Type-related material, used by any materials after they're certified, which is really sad in terms of this. So our goal is really to figure out, how do we help Type become the process of choice? Because what's our ultimate goal? World domination through Type. I say this all the time with a hint of humor to this, but I think that I do want people to know more about themselves. It is with total generosity that I say this, and the fact there's room for many processes in this. So a couple of things I want to say is that, number one, there's many things that we do right as a Type community. I think that's really important to say that. And it's to really recognize, as I go through this, what are some things that you're already doing that are really part of a strategy that you might not have realized is a strategy. But the other thing is, maybe there's some things you could do that maybe you haven't done. So again, we look at this in terms of both arenas. There is a false idea, if you build it, they'll come, Field of Dreams. That is not going to happen. So a couple of things that I see that for us, let me start with us as Type professionals before we talk about our clients. First of all, we do have shared responsibility in terms of brand recognition, that people see Type as something that's valuable, something they can actually utilize as a process to understand themselves, influence and communicate more effectively with other people around them. And you yourself need to make sure that you've got some degree of sales skills that are in there. And so just to think about that, is that something that I'm good at? Now, I hate being, I'm always hate hearing the word no, but I think that I'll talk to you about some ways that I actually get Type out there. One thing I also want to encourage you to think about is quit saying that you're selling Type instruments, or that you're selling Myers-Briggs or Type Coach or anything. Please don't tell. The thing that you want to think about is you're selling solutions. So one things that I do I'm really clear to my clients to make sure that I get a hold of what problems are they experiencing, what are some challenges they're facing. And I usually have a buffet of named challenges, because one things I find is when I name it first, they're less likely they're more likely to be more out loud about the fact they're facing these things. So I give them a list, and I give them other organizations, not by name, that are experiencing these challenges. And when they hear that, they go, oh, so are we. And so it gives them a starting point where it's not just a blank piece of paper. So I think that's really, really important. The other thing is, I think we've got to really study the competition. We need to have some sort of working knowledge to really talk about the competition, what's out there. And the big word that I use is and. So in other words, if I've got clients that are using other types of instruments, I never say, but what I'm doing is superior to theirs. I say, and this will take you further down the path towards influencing communication, solving problems, whatever that situation might be. And because I've said the word and, I don't feel a pushback from clients, because I'm not saying that I'm going to come in and knock out all the things they've done in terms of their corporate culture. I'm saying, and we can add this to the many competencies that your people have, and here's some ways of doing that. So I think that's really important. And I will say this, one thing's that, and there's so many ways to be right about this, so many different kinds of instruments, but there's lots of great information out there that I think that you want to have, again, a working knowledge about this, but you have to decide that you're going to increase your influence. The other thing is to engage your influencers. And we're not talking about YouTube influencers. We're talking about people that have weight inside the organization that other people listen to. And it's not always necessarily the person that's in charge. So one thing I believe is that you have to have a lot of contacts inside an organization. So what I do when I'm teaching a class, I'm connecting to every single person in that class. LinkedIn, they always get my cell number. They're not going to try to sell me an auto warranty, so I'm not worried about giving my cell number out. But when I make myself very accessible, they feel like they can reach out to me and ask me questions. Now, I never present this in a way that I'm superseding human resources or any other part of the organization. I'm a former HR director. I'm quite sensitive to that. But I always make sure that I present it as an adjunct to what they have. And so many times they can be the ones that actually make suggestions about things that could be done. So I want to make sure they're geared up for that and they have that information. But do not only have one contact inside an organization. People move, people get promoted, people leave, all kinds of things that are there. And putting all your eggs in one basket is a terrible strategy in terms of that. I also make sure that I use clients as influencers for other clients, because many times they want to know who has done this before we have. In other words, does somebody else try it and like it? And I mentioned them by name. And so Mercedes, for example, is given permission to use their name because, and again, I know I'm violating all the rules about too many things on a slide. And by the way, the handout has all this in there, so you'll get everything you need. It's so amazing. But one thing that we found is that from Mercedes, when I say Mercedes uses it, then other clients go, oh, okay, then maybe we should use it as well. And here's the thing that's so important. Use the list that the MBTI company has. Use the list that Type Coach company has. They've got many people that are already using this. They don't necessarily be your client. They can be a client or somebody that has actually engaged in this. So make sure you do your homework in terms of looking deeply into that and find those people within their industry that might be interested. This actually, now I went back and added in Roy Child's name this morning, y'all, because I'm an ENFP and I can do those things at the last minute, which is great. But I will say this, if you've not seen Doris's video on this, I would encourage you to look at it. So go back and look at Roy's presentation this morning. That'll be that was videotaped for our session, but also look at her presentation, because she has one that says what Adam Grant isn't telling you about the Big Five and what he gets wrong about MBTI and type. So I've given you the link for this in your handout, so you don't have to look that up. And I gave you the entire chat that's listed down below this in Doris's videotape that lists all the salient points. So you'll have all that in writing, and that's at the appendix at the very end. So I've done that work for you to make it easy, but it's an amazing presentation in which she gives you some really great firm points that you can in turn turn these into selling points when you're talking with clients. And again, the word I use is and. I do not use but. I use and. I'm not going to fight against them. I want to make that we're talking together. So a couple of things I encourage all of us is that within our type community, we can certainly have great give and take and look at the value of what each other's doing. But I am so careful when I talk with other people outside of this immediate community about what I say about type practitioners. I am very careful to back them up and say they have value. They add something that's important. So I'm careful about that. And the other part of it is, if we have an abundance mindset, there's enough out there for all of us. It's not as if there's a piece of pie, and if they get a piece of that pie, there's not anything left for you. That's not the way it is. Our goal is to make sure that we keep expanding this out, and there's room for everybody in terms of this process. And so we should actively be recruiting people into this, our type process. So for example, Heidi King's on here today. Heidi will tell you that I spent some time talking with her about type and the background and what's important about it, because I wanted her to be a part of this. I could see that she was really interested, that she had a lot of things that she was thinking about. And so I wanted her to be this. And now she is. She's joined our community. She's a great contributor to this. It's amazing. My theory is this: there's enough. So we should not be worried about that we're going to have less business as a result of it. I think if anything, it makes it more ubiquitous, so it becomes something that everybody's engaged in, and buy each other's books, by the way. So let's talk about this. So if you think about two arenas that we have, we obviously type is the internal operating system like iOS or Android. But if you take a look at human beings, there's two places where they operate. One is their brains, knowledge, skills, and abilities. The second is their internal value system, what matters to them. So all human behavior can be divided into these two areas, KSAs or motivation. That's the two big boxes for human beings. So as we look at this, we want to make sure that they can connect their skill sets to themselves, friends and families, colleagues, and they can apply their skills. It's not just enough to say, I'm an ENFP. It's enough, what am I going to do with this as a result of it? But also that they have the motivation so they can actually see why it matters to them. So I'm going to run through this part very quickly because you know this. But again, I want you to see this so you think about this as part of the process. Obviously, the MBTI, they take the assessment, and then you conduct some sort of session to introduce them to type. And I happen to use type in organizations versus introduction to type, period. I think that's a lot more for an organization. That's going to be a lot more meaningful than just the introduction type. Introduction type sounds too much theory. That's my opinion. Also, in terms of KSAs, Type Coach, which is, again, they're the backers of, they're supporting this particular session. Their verifier actually educates the user along the way. So they're engaged with this and they know something about the type by the time they finish taking the process. So that's a difference. So let's do a quick poll. I thought this might be fun. And Isabel's going to put this up. So what is your favorite instrument? Because again, there's many out there. I just like to know what you're using. I just think that's kind of fun. Plus it'll give me a chance to take a breath. This is so fun. Make sure you scroll down if you need to see the ones that are lower than that. There's a scroll down bar on your right hand side, so make sure you go down. All right, how are we doing? Oh, pretty good. All right. So I love the fact that there's some variety in terms of this. And again, we love the fact there's many options that are out there. So I made sure a point of putting Barron's interaction styles, and then there's some others. So again, it's that we're respectful of every process and we don't intentionally knock down somebody else's, because I think that's inappropriate. So can you see the results? Fantastic. Okay. So again, just to make sure we bring you into this. Another thing, and again, I'm going to give you a quick buffet of a lot of different offerings that are out there so that you can see this in terms of what's available to the learner. Because again, these are things that you probably have thought about, but it's making sure that you actually see what's there. And Renee, I promise I'm going to get to you. So I want to make sure that you don't think I'm ignoring you. But as we look at the offerings to people, a couple of things. One thing's that I will say this, 100% of the time I cover stress with my clients. I didn't before the pandemic. After the pandemic, it's a non-negotiable. So 100% of the time, whether it be an executive coaching situation or a classroom situation, stress is always the next thing that I cover next, because when people can see the deep connection this can have to the misery, anxiety, and fear they're carrying around, this makes them know that we are real in terms of this. So I think that's really important. I also make a point of saying, obviously, that we have in their own personal connection, influence, type in teams. By the way, I always like to tell people that Catherine and I were roommates for 6 months. She moved in with me and my husband for a while. So we have a great connection there. Mary McGinnis has a great book out she's from Australia, and she's showed me her book. So it's taking them deeper into that, because I want you to see there's a lot of things out there. And one of my intentions is to make sure that my clients see this is ubiquitous. This is not like a few academics with patches on their shoulders, smoking pipes, and talking about type. It's much more everyday, your everyday living. So I'm going to talk about Brose. Brose is a huge company. They're out of Coburg, Germany, and I have worked with them for years and years and years. They're just very profitable. They're a tier 1 supplier for Mercedes and Ford and all kinds of companies. So it's 2017, I have run their high talent program. And what does that mean? That we have a group of select people that go through intensive training for an entire year together. And at the end of the year, they do a marketplace presentation where they teach upper management everything they learned in that year's worth of training. So as I said, I've run this for them since 2017. One of the things that we've done is that type is a part of this entire process. Throughout the entire year, they are being introduced to type in all kinds of ways. And keep in mind, they're all blue-collar individuals, not necessarily people you would think as being, quote, academics or anything of that nature, but the way they grasp type and the way they start using it is a master class for all of this. Not only that, I am teaching them about how to connect to other human beings. Their mentors, which are teaching them about the business at Brose, are also utilizing type in terms of them talking about it. So I've trained their mentors on how to weave type into their conversations they're having with them. So it's a very cohesive process in terms of this. We also talk about type and change. So for example, I know there's an amazing book out, that Nancy and Annette have out, but I use, managing transitions, making most of type, and then the type coach information. So because there's nothing more certain than death, taxes, and change. So again, change is a key thing that I believe we have to be talking about and helping people to navigate that. Conflict. I'm a master trainer in crucial conversations. Everybody's got conflict. Here's my mother's training conflict. You better work it out. And if you don't work it out, I'll work it out for you. So that was my mother's training for the 7 of us. That was terrible. So we have to help people gain a key skill set, which is conflict. So again, you should be looking at that as one of your offerings and not just see it as the initial introduction to type, but how you're going to help them feather this out into other parts of their organization. And then again, in the coaching process, I mentioned that earlier, making sure they see this, that the coaches themselves have got skill sets to help people gain this. And so there's, again, amazing resources for this. Again, communication, a given, and then prioritization, time management. Dear Gussie, we've been talking about time management forever, and it's not true that only perceivers procrastinate, that everybody has a degree of procrastination. So we get a chance to figure out what's happening there. But again, time management is a key skill set that we should have gotten in grammar school, but you and I both know that's not what's happened. So we have to teach people not only their attitudes towards this, but actually how to manage their time in terms of that. And then I mentioned, and Catherine, I'm sorry, Catherine, I have no idea how your book got behind that. I apologize for that. But one thing I mentioned was Catherine Stoddart's book. I'm so sorry, Catherine, that wasn't meant to happen. But I believe in having book clubs. I teach people to use the type books and for them to run the book clubs. And I've encouraged Catherine to develop book club questions that they can actually utilize. But I think in terms of doing that, it helps them again to see there's a lot of information out there about type, and it's not, again, just academic type stuff, and of course, type and learning. So as I think about this, let's talk about in the chat, what are some things that you're already using or that you could use in terms of promoting the knowledge, skills, and abilities around type? While we're doing that, I'd like to answer Renee's question that he has or had a chance to make his point. So Renee, let's hear from you.
I don't think I had a question this time, but I really appreciate your sharing these ideas. I remember when I was at P&G, I was leading the network of practitioners, and we decided to always look for what were the buzzwords in the company, because indeed we made an investment in the typology. And so, rather than push an HR product, we said, what is the need? And then coming out of our employee relation survey or employee engagement survey, we had coaching at the time, we had well-being and stress, we had decision making, and we used the booklets exactly like you're describing to create a session around that. So you invested in the tool, now let's use it, because otherwise, oh, we know each other, big group hug, let's go back to work. No, this is work, so use it.
Beautiful. And I love the fact that you said we're connecting this. And again, I think that's important for us to really, use it in this way so that we can actually see these things and do this. All right. So, so let's press on from this. A couple of things that, as I mentioned, that sometimes type might not necessarily be the subject that I'm presenting, but I will tell you this, I product place type throughout the entire presentation. I'm saying it, I am connecting it, I'm bringing it up because I'm having it be a live situation. And I always have a, but wait, there's more slide. And so I'm piquing the people that are in my sessions' interest about this. And because they can visually see there's other options out there, again, a buffet, they do better from a buffet versus just from stuff, just hearing stuff. And then I say, I show this in every session, but here's my goal. I want to create FOMO, fear of missing out, fear that there's something else out there they could have. And if they don't get it, their life is not going to be complete. And I'm clearly saying that. I'm going, and I'll even say things like, gosh, y'all, I wish I could do something on stress for y'all, because I think that's something you could really utilize. Or gosh, I wish we could do something on, time management and prioritization. I am clearly connecting the need and speaking out loud for them, because that ends up taking root. And sometimes they don't think about it right there in the session, but I guarantee you 2 to 3 weeks afterwards, they will. And this starts to populate into requests to human resources or training for things they'd like to have. Because again, I've given them the words, I've helped them to think about their need, the fact that it's a valuable need, and the fact there's some solutions out there. So we're connecting to their internal values. It's also, we should be connecting to the human connection. They need a support system around them in terms of type. They also need a coach. So let's talk about the fact that humans can play these roles in what they're actually doing. They need accountability partners, friends and family that are using type so they can have somebody they can talk to about this, but coaches to also help them apply their skills. So let's talk about this specifically. Let's talk about the coaching aspect of it. So as I mentioned, Brose, one thing that we have, again, is I'm teaching them type-related things all throughout the sessions, throughout the year. But their mentors inside the company are echoing the information about type. But at the end of the year, we have them do this magnificent presentation that they put together. I step out of it and they design this. And they each give amazing, it's a master class to see what they do with this. The graphics are theirs. They're the ones that have picked it. I don't tell them what to say or do, but they always end up wowing all of internal management about what they're learning. And here's the best part about it. They're making the case for next year for us to do this again. So I have not had to sell this program every single year. They do this and they see that they're different. And they have the ability to call me anytime to talk over problems or whatever, because I want them to be successful. The other thing I always tell people is beware polar bears. So I had a friend of mine who lived in Churchill, Canada, where the polar bears are. And that's why tourists go there. You can only fly in, fly out. You cannot drive there. So one night she was walking home and she and a friend of hers, and a polar bear ran towards her and this friend. The friend ran away. She was frozen in place. Literally, the polar bear got her and attacked her in the most vicious way you could imagine. She luckily got away because her next door neighbor saved her. And she luckily lived after being airbagged out of Churchill, Canada to get some deep intensive care. So she's telling me the story. And here's my question to her. Did you have bear mace with you? And she said, no. She said, yes. I said, did you use it? And she said, no. Did your friend go get help? No. I said, what are y'all doing to train people on how to deal with polar bears? She said, we have meetings. I said, are the meetings training people for what they need to do next? And she said, no. I said, what about if you practice this? If you actually practice pulling out your bear mace, going and getting help, all the things that need to happen. And she said later that she decided to change their entire process in Churchill to actually do practice training. The reason I tell you that story is we've got to have people practice utilizing type. It can't just be a one and done, your 4 letters, out of here, see you later. It's got to be application, application, application. That's something we have to consciously do. And it goes back to what Renee said. That's what they're doing. That's what they were doing in P&G. So let's take this one, Introduction, Type, and Teams. Let's talk about this one, for example. So one of the things I do, and I've given you all the directions for this, so you do not have to write this down. I even gave you little pictures to show you how to do it. But they take a look at the second column in this, how they irritate other team members, and what are examples they've learned about that has caused them problems in terms of interacting with others. They have to each identify something on their own page. Then they get in a triad where they have to tell 2 other people how they know this is really a problem for them. And each person takes a turn sitting in that speaking chair, revealing their own problems and how they know it's a problem. Then they have to ask for advice. They have to turn their chair backwards, and the other 2 people get a chance to coach them on what are things that they can do differently so this is no longer a problem for them. Now, the best thing about this is, number 1, people are saying out loud, this is a problem. So that takes them one step closer to embracing the fact they do this. Number 2, 2 other people are listening to this who are also going to be revealing. So the vulnerability is rewarded by other people sharing their own flaws that they have. The third thing is everybody's coaching them. Instead of criticizing them for doing this, they're in a position of helping them. And they come back to the next session and talk about how they applied the coaching that they got. And we keep doing this every single thing that we do. It always has the same process. So again, and they have to make plans for actually utilizing this and putting it into place and making sure it's a part of what they do. Because again, I want this inside their DNA. I want it to be the bear mace they immediately pull out and utilize and know how to use. Another thing I do is an exercise called Yes, It's True. This is so fun. So what I do is I have them look at their report and talk about and put on Post-it notes things that they feel that they're good at, things that they like to be noticed for. And so they each take a turn in terms of doing that. And then the rest of the people inside the circle have to say how they know this is true. So for example, JW says idea generator, mediator, building, compromise. So they have to tell JW, here's how I've seen you do this. This is something I really appreciate about how you've done this. The only person the only thing that person can say is, yes, it's true. That's the only thing they can say in response to this. And what we found is that people start seeing the gifts and strengths that each person has. They start complimenting them in the way that they like to be complimented. And they now start seeing that person brings something that I don't have. So they start seeing this in such a great interdependent relationship. I can give you all the graphics, by the way, if you ever want those. From the coaching standpoint, this is something Type Coach gives, which I think is really important. Let's admit Roy in here if we don't mind. So this is something that Type Coach gives that that I really love. So there's a process where it actually includes things like it has a thing called type to type. So when you're trying to talk about how one type interfaces with another type, they get concrete ideas on how to work with that person and the way that person wants to be worked with. They get videos so they can actually see it in action. They get ways to influence that individual, how they can lead, coach, manage stress, and provide feedback. And again, this is tailored help that it's given to them so they can actually utilize and practice type. And then again, they get all kinds of tools and resources. So another thing I do is I am intentional about putting lots of books in all of my handouts that I give, pictures of them, whatever's out there, you know, because I want them to see this is not just some sort of academic exercise. There's many things available that can be really helpful to you, that help you be a better individual. So they find this and get lots of, and I show them this. I've got this nice graphic that I made. This came from my iPad because I've got all these books on my iPad. So I put that out there so they can actually see it. I tell them, look, guys, listen to Personality Hacker. It's great. It's a great, in fact, I listened to it last night. They're talking about ENFPs last night. So I guess that was probably my favorite episode. But I enjoy listening to them and hearing some of the things the little nuances or way they've said something, or even things I disagree with. It just helps me grow in terms of this. Susan Strong is an amazing contributor that we have on Twitter, formerly X. And I enjoy interacting with her because she's constantly trying to really study this field and feel like what's going on. Joyce Ming. I love the fact we've got new voices coming into this job because I'm old. You know, I want to make sure this continues long after I'm dead, and welcome new people to this is really important. And that means of all ages. Doesn't necessarily be young. But again, it's keeping type in the conversation. And I don't feel threatened by any of this. I feel excited about it because that means that it's taken root in something that's really important. The other thing is that you want to have people that can support them in their journey. And I see this, I use that word journey intentionally. So for example, when people have taken type inside an organization, I offer to come back in on a Saturday and do a type class where they can bring their friends, their family, and their roommates. And they go attend this session. Now, the mandatory aspect of it is they themselves must have taken it through the process that's offered by the organization. They cannot substitute this for that. But here's the other thing that's so amazing about that is, and it's an abbreviated version. It's not like the longer thing. But here's the thing that's so fun about doing this is that number one, everybody's got to take a type instrument. And in my case, I use Type Coach, but whatever instrument you use, that means they got to take it. They can't just skip by and not do that. So again, you're having them actually take and pay for the actual instrument that's there because they'll pay for that and I'll give my time. So it's a great experience. But what have we found? Harry, I met him at Costco and he said, that family workshop, Sharon, saved my marriage. He said, my wife and I, what you didn't know is that she and I decided to end our marriage of 30 years. And once we got in that workshop, we remembered what we loved about each other. We are still together and we are head to Colorado together, and it's amazing. We have taken back our filings for divorce. This is it. Frank, who's a good friend of mine, he's an HR director. He said, my wife and I had adopted this young boy, and he said, he and my wife just did not like each other. He said, I'm just going to tell you this, was not going well for them. He said, once we took this, they now get each other and they are loving each other in ways that I've never seen before. So the more you can collect those stories and tell those stories and relate those, that's it. Do I do house calls? I sure do. I've actually been to, this is so funny. I had 2 clients say, would you come to my house and do this? I said, sure. Got to pay for the instrument. So they did. And so I did one for a family that actually adopted 2 kids, and they wanted to understand how to help them fit in family dynamic, and they adjust to that. And then another one he's a physician who wanted to learn more about this. And here's the thing that paid off. He now became certified in type coach, y'all. He decided he wanted to become certified, and he's the head of this huge company that serves the underserved in Alabama. And he felt like that because he's an ENTJ, he felt like it really helped him to comprehend people, what they were about. He talks about type constantly. It's just amazing. So I'm not going to bore you by reading this, other than saying it's helped him inside the organization. It's helped him with his family. And now he's the one that decided to become certified in this, which I thought that was pretty great. And you can do the reverse. I did a free session for a worldwide marriage encounter and talked about type. I ended up getting a big contract out of this from somebody who owned an accounting firm. And so they decided to have me come in and do it for their organization. So please don't discount those freebie things. I still do them. I still go and do lunchtime things for people, because anytime I can plant a seed of how exciting and amazing this can be, the more there's a good chance it'll blossom to work. So it's thinking about that. So let's talk about this together. What are some things that, has this sparked in terms of your ideas about type? And, what are some things that you're already doing? Because again, do I think I have all the ideas? I do not think that. I think I have many ideas, but I don't think I have everything. So what are some things that y'all are doing? You can raise your hands too. We could chat. We could talk out loud.
I was going to mention, after sitting in the earlier thing where they were talking to the prejudice of type, I just kept thinking the earlier we can get to these folks, even starting with the kids, that they start learning about type before they hear all the biases and all the preconceived ideas. So then they're more open to it, I think, and we might get a better generation of communicators.
Absolutely. And that's why the work of Elizabeth Murphy and so many other people, and Lynn, I know you work with families. That's something we have to think about, y'all. We cannot wait until they've gotten to the workplace. The more we can find people where they are and make it earlier, the greater the chance they're going to say, hey, it helped me. It helped me navigate adolescence. Renee, what's on your mind?
Yeah, it's something I wanted to do when I was still with P&G, but never got around to when I left. It's to work with a company to analyze, we said never use it for recruitment. Okay, fine. But I'm sure there are trends we can find and patterns in career development and the success of the different types and how well recognized they are, in ratings, in speed to being promoted, in turnover and resignations and all of that. So, I think for me, it's another aspect of diversity. It's another variable. It's non-visible, but I'm sure there are similar dynamics of power imbalance between the INFP type of preferences that are less well recognized by society than the ESTJ type of preferences, and be fascinating to study. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to do any of that.
Yeah, and I mean, again, and I'll go back to what you said. I think that having other people speak about the value of it, that's better than us trying to do all of that. I think it's great when the user says, this is how it helped me. This is what it did for me. I'm a better person now because of this. This is what I learned. This is how I saved my marriage. Whatever the things might be, that's a stronger voice than us saying those things. So thank you again. Thank you for that. Any other comments about that? Oh, go ahead, Catherine. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. I only just put my hand up. No, I think I'm just reinforcing probably what you've already said, Sharon, but starting with the problem, you're not going in to sell type, you're going in because they've got some issue, whether it's conflict, relationships, influencing, building bridges with other teams, whatever it might be. So you're starting with the problem and then you're saying, oh, well, I think I can help you with that. And this is what we'll do. So, I mean, and I think the other thing, I think Angelina mentioned it in the previous session to this, which is just those personal examples. If I can say to somebody, oh, it really helped me to understand, or my husband and I to help us understand each other. They help, and the sort of examples you quoted from some of your clients just now, the real personal, concrete examples, I think those help.
Exactly. And honestly, my client said, hey, we're happy to put our voice in there. So it wasn't like I had to arm wrestle them into doing this. They wanted to talk about it. And I wanted them, and I love the fact that John became certified. I mean, it's the craziest thing, because you would think, well, Sharon, that's less work for you. You know what? It makes my life easier and better because it means somebody else is going to be using type. I celebrate that versus there's other work. It's not like that's the only way. And I'm still using this organization. He hasn't gotten rid of me. Y'all, he can't. he loves and needs me. So a couple of things I want to talk about. This Alacare is home health and hospice organization, huge organization all over the state of Alabama. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, not Birmingham, England. I'm sure you couldn't tell from my accent, right? But a couple of things that's so great is that it's funny, I was just talking to Susan about this last week, as a matter of fact. She said it was the best thing we've ever done for our organization. And she got one INTP wrote her and said, saved my life. It was just the best gift you ever gave me, and talked at length about what had happened in their life. And they put everybody's type on their badges with their permission. And what they have found is they have less acrimony and more robust conversation, and spend less time judging each other, and more value in saying, you know what, I'm just looking at this as an INFJ. Hey, Chris, do you have a value that I can bring to this that I don't see? I've got a blind spot. Can you see this? So they've learned to speak in terms of blind spots, and it's made it better. And again, they provide this. Sozo Children is a group that I work with. They're actually building homes in Uganda because there's more orphans in the state of Uganda than there are people in the state of Alabama. It's a terrible situation. Children are used for child sacrifice, trafficking, you name it. It's a horrible thing. And so the thing that they're doing is they build a big, huge worship center. They make sure they've got a source of water, but they also make sure they've got homes, which 2 Ugandan children are put together with, 2 Ugandan parents are put together with 8 children. So they have interns that go over there and work 100% of the time. They send everybody to a type class because what they found is so stressful when they go over there. It's just a challenging, heart-wrenching situation. But they found that when people take type class, they start to understand each other's stress, and they're less judgmental towards one another, and they found they can more easily accomplish the mission. So that's pretty great. So friction down, forgiveness up. And plus, goes back to what Lynn said earlier, millennials are being introduced to type. So it's earlier. Other food for thought. So we have this amazing chef called Chris Hastings. He's a James Beard winner. And one thing that he does is he looks for people in his kitchen who he believes should start restaurants. And he makes a point of teaching them how to run a restaurant, how to be a chef, how to actually run the business of doing this. We certainly can do the exact same thing. I think we have to give people help in terms of actually concrete ways they can actually start their practices and run their organizations, and doing that. Within this organization, BAPT, they have this amazing support process where it's a type practitioner peer support that Sarah runs, and it's fantastic. It gives people a chance to really talk about type and get support from one another and find that sense of community. I actually run with Julie Dasa, who's on the team at Type Coach, and I'm a volunteer. She's an insider, and we do virtual coffees every single month. And our goal is to make sure that people can start their coaching practices or their practices in general, and I can help them do this. I can help them understand how to run it, how to use type in it. I'm happy to do that. It doesn't take work away from me. It's pleasurable, and I love seeing people be successful. So again, some other ways of doing that. Other things I think we ought to think about doing is, for example, Crucial Learning, which actually puts out Crucial Conversations and Crucial Influence, these two amazing books. They actually have, hey, dear Crucial Learning, here's some problems I'm up against. This happens, this happens, this happens. What can I do? It might be good for us to have a question answer kind of thing where it's real life scenarios where we start to collect those stories. Facebook, I know, for example, we have a Type Coach Partners one in which everybody comes together, shares ideas, asks for help. You know, people freely give stuff away. They don't feel like, oh my gosh, I get to Yvonne, I'm gonna have less work for me. It's kind of like, oh good, Yvonne needs some help. Here's what I can do. So we get a chance to share best practices. But here's the other part. We see people's faces. They become people to us that matter. And I think we need that sense of community. And that's one of the reasons I belong to BAPT, APTI, and the Australian group. These are my people, y'all. I mean, this is my tribe. So this is who I like to hang around. And then another thing is monthly webinars. I know, for example, Type Coach has those, but again, learn to say yes and. Anything we can do to help the continuing education of people is just huge. So as we think about it, do free workshops. I do that for United Way every year. They have 50 people that come in from other organizations, big organizations in Birmingham, to come in to run the campaign for people to donate to United Way, which is a nonprofit. And they run these campaigns. Every single week starts out with Type. Every single week, every single campaign of every year. One year I was in Iceland. They had to use disc instead of Type because I wasn't there. They said they will never do that again. They said it was the worst campaign they ever ran. And all of a sudden I had people out there being ambassadors for me who love Type. And I've connected all those people. Y'all know me. Parents groups. I think we ought to be presenting to parents groups because when they can see that their kids are wired differently from them. And I do this for a lot of parents groups and they go, oh, they feel like they got the Rosetta Stone handed to them, which is amazing. Find out what everybody's specialty is. I like knowing that Lynn works with families. I'd love to know what David does, what Heidi does. When I know what you all are doing, I will sell for you and make sure that I connect a need to that. I had somebody come to me for career counseling. I don't do that. But I found somebody in the community that does this, in the Type community, connect them together. She's got a great contract. She's going to get a second one out of it. It's amazing. I love that. So recommend. Connect on LinkedIn. We should all know each other by the time BAPT is over with. We should all be connected on LinkedIn to one another. You know, I will tell you this in all transparency. I look your names up and I want to connect you because I believe you've got something interesting that I want to know about. And I think that's amazing. What's the final proof? So one of the things that Candace Baldwin has said is that this helps everybody to understand and give each other the benefit of the doubt. It is replace judgment with curiosity, and they can apply it to everyday situations that they're in. General Wesley Clark, this is interesting. He's a retired Supreme Commander of NATO. So as we all know, and this is something that Roy talked about at the beginning of his session, we have acrimony everywhere. It's in the UK, it's certainly in the States, it's a mess. So we actually have this process where we bring together 10 Democrats, 10 Republicans, and 10 independents. They come together in a selected process because our goal is to teach them skill sets so they can actually interface with each other and develop solutions in a very respectful way. We're in our 5th cohort now that's going to be starting up. The first session they all take is Type Coach. That's the first thing they do. And to a person, they say it's the best thing they do to keep them from judging each other so harshly. They said in typical situations, they would hate each other. But when they see the essence of the person, they no longer feel that way. So y'all, that's a labor of love. That's something we could all be doing, which I think is amazing. We all need this. But General Clark says, best thing we do, y'all. Hey, that's an influencer for me anyway. Keep in mind our goal is, y'all, world domination through Type. So a couple of things I want to tell you about is that there's some free stuff in the handout that I've given you. There's a code that you have there if you would like to take Type Coach. No pressure, but I encourage you to at least think about it. I also want to say, I'm working on this, y'all, cure staph infection. a true ENFP title for something, but it's how do you deal with workplace drama? And please connect to me. Let me say this. If you're struggling in terms of trying to get your business kicked off the ground or get something going, I'll help you with that. Think about coming to the Type Coach copies that we have. One is the connection to my LinkedIn, the other one's connection to my cell phone. You are not going to try to sell me auto warranties. I know that. So I am happy to help you in any way I possibly can, because if you're successful, remember y'all, I'm an ENFP. Seeing people reach their highest potential is my joy. So I would love to do that any way that I possibly can. I want to thank BAPT for having this conference. That's so much work, y'all. I want to thank Isabel for being my partner in crime. She was amazing. I want to thank Type Coach for supporting this. I did not know they were supporting this until 2 days ago, and that was a beautiful surprise. So very much appreciate that. All right, so let's stop sharing and let's have it all just us chickens, so we can all talk here. Let's hear from everybody. What's going on in your team?
I just have,
Go on, lady, go on.
no, go ahead.
Oh, all I was going to say was, while people are thinking about what they want to say, I just wanted to comment. Your last comment, Sharon, about you're a fantastic example of the catalyst temperament, and also in the interaction styles, the get things going, or I call it energizer, but that you've transmitted so much energy to us in this recording, in this session. It's amazing.
Thank you.
But Lynn, please go ahead.
I was just going to say, Sharon has just been amazing. She's so generous with her time and information. And if you haven't had a chance to do the virtual coffee, it is, I look so forward to that and come out energized every time.
And very practical help, y'all. I know I'm an ENFP, but because I work, I worked for the IRS for many years. Here I am in an ISTJ organization. It was great. It was a great background because it taught me to settle down and be more practical, be more concrete. And then obviously I've made my way through manufacturing, which is very STJ as a general. And so that has really helped me out in terms of making sure I can talk very practically and not so woo-woo, which I think is important. Thank you, Toby. I appreciate that.
I just want to say, Sharon, I am constantly learning from you, and we talk a fair amount, and we have so many interactions, and I was like, I sort of feel like I know I learned a ton today. So thank you for that. You just pack it chock full of goodness and nuggets. I'm also so impressed with some of your techniques, like always taking pictures whenever you do training sessions, and you should see the smiles on these people's faces when she sends these pictures. Everyone is like they've been at a Tony Robbins 4-day, experience. Like they are so excited and happy and energized. And, she sends those pictures to them afterward, and all these little special touches that, it takes a little extra effort, but it's so worth it. And then just your super ability to product place. I mean, the way that you get them to, whenever you do a program, you always get more programs because you're product placing in the program for the next programs. And that's something that could easily be lost as we try to pack as much as we can content wise into the time that they give us. But it takes an extra couple minutes, and it's a little bit of strategizing, and it's worth it. So just 2 things I've learned from you, but out of hundreds. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you so much. And again, I hate rejection, y'all. So that's a whole lot better way of doing it by product placing than having to beg and plead for the business, because I'm not good at that. And David, thank you for that, your comment about, I do think this. So first of all, let me just say this. I think that teaching Crucial Conversations has really taught me a great way of having dialogue about stuff and not fighting with everybody on things. I don't want to do that. That's just, life's too short. So again, and curious, not furious. That's something I said in the last session. I think we've got to do that and say, hey, help me understand why you feel that way, and whatever that might be. So I love the fact this conference is about how do we tackle these things? How do we get more mature about this and do this? So thank you. Oh, and Isabel saying 5 minutes to the end of the session. She's exactly right. Any other comments? And Glenn, I'm happy to stay on afterwards because obviously you're the people that I love. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for being here, all of you. Oh, Heidi, you got something to say.
Oh, I just want to say thank you for your generosity and for your great heart. I'm greatly benefit, and I love Type Coach, and I want to learn more about it. And I did thank you for Carly, and thank you for sharing. And that's gave me great like tools to work around my personal life and professional life. Thank you so much. I just want to
you.
thank
Thank
you.
all of you. Thank you so much.
I'm just
Oh,
wondering
Quick
if I
question.
stop
Renee,
record. Carry on. Yeah, go on.
Just a quick question, because I was always trying to keep the tool, you know, abreast of the times. So again, bringing solutions as opposed to a tool. Have you had recent requests for, you know, looking at it from a different angle and say, how can I use type, you know, to bring a solution to that question? Like for instance, you know, again, where I was before, they were looking at simplification. I was okay, I'm sure I can adapt because, you know, every type finds something more complex if it's the opposite of their type. But, you know, have you had, what are the new trends or the new questions you're being asked, or where do you see there's more pool these days?
what I see is more stress than I've seen ever before, ever. I mean, I know, for example, I'm losing my hair. My doctor said, "Are you stressed?" I said, "I don't think so." And he said, "Pandemic, Sharon, stress." And so I would say stress and anxiety is the biggest thing that I'm seeing from everybody. People are terrified and they're afraid. And I think that when we can give them a sense of themselves and the fact that they have gifts to offer, that they have other people around them that have amazing gifts as well, and they can actually see those things. And I think, again, it's got to be framed in such a practical way. Because I have a friend of mine who says, I just want to have people reach their higher selves. I said, Kathy, I love you, but that will never sell anything. People are not trying to reach their higher selves. You've got to be able to name this in a very much more concrete way. So again, I think that's the biggest thing that I'm seeing is just there's a lot of fear. And I think, again, this is a way of replacing all that judgment, with a little bit of happiness and curiosity. So thank you for asking that. Catherine, you were going to say something.
Thank you.
I was just wondering if, as it's nearly the time, if Isabel wanted to thank you, and then I'll stop the recording and then people can carry on having a chat.
Okay, that'd be great. And thank all of you for being here. I know you had many choices today, and so thank you for choosing this session. I don't ever take that for granted,
It's
ever.
been an inspiration, and you energize and very much enjoyed it. And Sharon is going to stay around for a few minutes after the session
Absolutely.
for anyone that wants to stay and chat.